Hey, you're watching with Wendy, and today I'm going to show you how I make this onesie. It has a hood and it's footed. For this onesie, you just need 3 yards of fleece, and obviously you can go with any color you like. I went with pink. And then if you want to add the belly and the lining and the ears and the face, you're gonna have to buy a bit more. I had about 1.5 yards of white fleece and then also some black fleece to make them eyes. I based mine off of the Kigurumi animal onesies that are really popular. I'll put a link down below if you want to go there and get some inspiration. They have this really cute Rilakkuma bear, and I decided to make it in pink. But if you're into bunnies, cats, dragons, all of those animals are on the Kigurumi website for you to get inspiration on the body parts that you'll need to really finish it off. If you're watching this tutorial and you like it, then let me know by hitting the like button. And of course, if you want to see more of my tutorials in the future, just subscribe. I post new videos every week, so without further ado, we will get going with this onesie. What's that? Here are the pieces that you'll need to make the body of the onesie. I'll put a link in the description with all of the dimensions that I used, but really you should just use your own clothing to size it to fit you. There are, however, 2 mistakes that I made when I was cutting this out, so I'm going to highlight them now so that you don't make the same mistake. One is that when it comes to the leg, I would soften the curve a lot. The second thing that I would fix is the sleeves. I made the slope of that sleeve way too steep, and also I made these sleeves way too short. You should definitely lengthen these sleeves as well to fit your arms. Start by folding the big back piece in half with the right sides touching, and then sew a very thin seam along the folded edge. This just helps to give the onesie a bit of a spine and look a bit nicer when you're done. With the front piece of the onesie, you can separate it down the middle and then also cut the neckline to be a bit deeper since you need to make room for your neck. Then you can go ahead and add the white stomach along that straight edge, lining it up so that it's about equidistance from the top and the bottom. To attach the stomach, simply tuck in and pin about 1 centimeter of white fabric inwards all the way around the U, and then sew it with a straight stitch. Once the outer curve is done, you can also secure it by sewing a straight stitch down the middle. Make sure you do this to both the left and the right sides of the front. Pin the 2 front pieces right sides together, making sure that the whites of the stomach are lined up. Lay down a long zipper with the open end at the top, and add 1 extra pin where the zipper ends. We're going to sew these 2 halves together using a straight stitch, but everything that's above the pin, you should use a very long stitch length since we're going to undo it later, and everything below the pin, use a smaller stitch length because that's for keeps. Lay open that seam that's on the inside of the front and pin down the zipper on both sides. Make sure your zipper is long enough to fit your entire body. My zipper, for the record, was 22 inches, so that should be pretty close to what you need. Using a straight stitch, we'll go down one side of the zipper, square across the bottom, and back up the other side. Now flip everything over so you're looking at the right side of the front. We're going to use a seam ripper and gently tear apart the stitch that was holding those 2 sides together. This is why I said you should use a long stitch length on that top half, because it's going to make seam ripping it much easier. When you're done taking apart those stitches, you should be able to zip up and zip down with no problem. Now we can pin the front and the back together along the shoulder edges with the right sides touching, and sew those 2 in place with a straight stitch. Open up the front and the back pieces so that you're looking at the top of the shoulder. We're going to take our sleeve pieces, fold them in half so that we can find the point of symmetry, and then pin these all along the curve. Once you're done that, you just sew a straight stitch all along the curve, attaching the sleeve to the shoulders. This is where I tried it on and things look great, but then I realized, oh, my sleeve is way too short. So yes, don't make this mistake. Pin the onesie right sides together at the armpit and then sew all the way down the 2 sides of the onesie, starting at the sleeve, going all the way down the sides of the body. Pin together the center points of the front and the back with the right sides touching, and now sew from one leg to the other all along the inner leg. With some elastic, you should cut 2 pieces that can fit around your foot and then 2 pieces that can fit around your elbow. These are going to be the ankle and the wristbands. Using a zigzag stitch, attach the 2 ends together to make a loop. Wrap the ankle ones around the leg and then pin it at an even distance all the way around. Sew it down with a zigzag stitch. For the little feet, pin it all the way around, leaving open only the top where you put your foot in, and sew it down with a straight stitch. Slip the foot inside of the leg with the right sides facing each other and pin it all the way around the raw edge. You're going to sew these together with a straight stitch, but make sure that your foot is pointing in the right direction, or else you're going to have to redo this. Pin the wristband elastic evenly around the end of the sleeve and use a zigzag stitch to attach this. I flipped the elastic inwards twice and then sewed it down again with a zigzag stitch to hem off the edge and hide away the elastic band. The last step for the body is the tail. We're going to pinch in 4 equidistant corners, as if a circle really has corners, you know what I mean, and then sew them down with a straight stitch to make little triangles, and this is going to help it give a bit rounder of a shape. Mark the spot on the back where you'd like the tail to be, and then fold the raw edge of the tail inwards about 1 centimeter and pin it down to the back of the onesie. Add a little bit of fluff to that tail just so you can help gauge how far you need to pin the other end of the tail. I bring it all the way over, tuck under 1 centimeter, and then pin that also to the back of the onesie. Make sure you're not going through all the layers, just the one back layer. You can go ahead and add pins all the way around now, but make sure you pull out the fluff before you add the final pin. We'll sew with a straight stitch all the way around the tail, but make sure you leave an opening in which you can add the fluff before sealing it off. Here's that opening that I was talking about. I'm going to remove that last pin and then shove in the fluff that's remaining. Honestly, in most cases I've discovered with stuffing these things is that you should stuff more than you think is necessary. So just go ham on the stuffing until it's practically bursting, and then that should be enough to seal it off. Sometimes if you put in too little, it ends up not really being as fluffy as you'd like. To ensure total comfy coziness, we have to finish with a hood. So these are the 4 pieces that you're going to need in order to finish. I'll put a total description of the dimensions that I used in a blog post in the description for you. We'll start by attaching these 2 sides to the back piece, going along the straight edge and then finishing off around the curve. Everything that I'm telling you to do with the pink fabric in order to assemble the hood needs to be repeated with the white fabric as well. I cut off the excess back piece that was sticking out and then went ahead to pin the entire long piece all around the curved edge to add to the hood. Use a straight stitch and sew that long piece all along the outside of the hood. This is a piece that you're going to have to adjust a lot depending on how deep you cut your collar. So my collar was very shallow, not very deep, and I had to adjust this piece a lot later on. I had to cut it down to size, but if you decided to make your collar a lot deeper, you won't have to adjust this piece as much. So I've left the dimensions to be enough leeway depending on you. For now, the main goal is to sew it down in place and we can cut it up and trim it to the right size later. Of course, don't forget everything that you do with the outer layer you'll need to do with the white fabric, which I'm going to use as a lining. These are the 4 pieces you'll need to make the face of the Rilakkuma bear. I cut them out of black fleece and the white fleece, and then pinned that to the pink fabric, spacing them out so that it looked normal. The white part of the face is actually very similar to how we attach the tail, so we're going to tuck in about 1 centimeter all the way around and pin it down, sew all the way around leaving a gap, and then shove in the stuffing in order to finish. If this looks kind of freaky to you, wait till later. Here I am with that small gap that I left and I'm putting in some stuffing. This time you really don't have to go heavy on the stuffing because it's just the gentle facial features, so you don't want it to be super poofy. Once you're done to a certain level of stuffiness that you're happy, then seal off that opening to finish. The eyes go on in the same way, but you don't need to add any stuffing. And yes, this is the one that I thought was way scarier than when the white snout had all the pins. The eyes! The other step that's remaining is to add glue onto the back of the little nose and mouth, and then gently place that into the middle of the snout. The glue that I used, I'll put a link in the description. It's apparently okay to go into the washing machine, so it should be good enough for you. Next, we will pin that white lining all the way along that front of the hood, and then tuck the fabric under to sew all the way around. I trimmed up the back bottom edge of the hood to make sure it was nice and clean, and then lined that up with the center of the back of the onesie and pinned that all along as well. Here's where you'll notice if that front piece really gave you a lot of excess fabric at the collar. If it did, all we're going to do is cut away the excess using a sloped line starting from the side of the face going down to the end of the hood. At the end of the hood, make sure you're leaving about 1 inch so that there's enough fabric to tuck in and hem it properly, and just cut with a gentle curve in order to make it back up to the face. You'll have to re-hem the edge of the hood at this point, so I start at the face end, fold it under twice, and then sew all the way down to the end of the hood where it meets the collar. Now that the hood is the appropriate size and completely hemmed, you can sew it with a straight stitch to the back of the onesie. Obviously, we would like Rilakkuma Bear to hear everything that is being said, so cut out 4 half moons in pink, 2 half moons in white, and sew those 2 pink ones right sides together along the curve. Again, if you're wondering about size, check the link that's in the description and I'll have the full dimensions for you. Fold those pink half moons the other way and then add 2 little triangles along the front and along the back. This just helps the ear to have a bit more rounded of a shape. Tuck 1 centimeter down on the white half moon and pin that to the line of symmetry on the pink half moons, then go all the way around the 2 sides until you reach the straight edge. Sew this in place using a straight stitch, and while you're sewing, make sure you are only going through 1 layer of the pink fabric and not all of the layers. Next, you'll stuff the ear, and here you can be super generous with stuffing again. If you're wondering why the background has changed, the sewing machine has changed, the stuffing color has changed, it's because this last bit I filmed at my home to finish off the project, and we only have eco stuffing at home, which of course I guess is good for the environment, so it's not so bad. But yeah, that's why everything changed. When you're happy with how the 2 little ears look, then we can go ahead and pin it to the hood of the onesie. To pin it to the hood of the onesie, I simply tuck under about 1 centimeter and then pin that to only the outer layer of the onesie, going all the way around and spacing it out so that, to me, it looks cute. With a needle and thread, I go through the hood layer, then pierce through a little bit of the ear, and then go back through all those layers again and again and again, all the way around until I'm back to where I started. Only go through little bits of fabric so that this stitch is not too evident, and just try to stay really close to the line that you've pinned along. Once the ear puffs up when you're done, it usually will hide away all of those stitches. Finish off by tying 2 knots to that thread and you are done! Congratulations! That's a wrap on the onesie. I hope you all really enjoyed this project because it's super fun and you end up with something that's so comfortable to slouch and lounge around in. If you end up making this tutorial, feel free to tag me on Instagram, Snapchat, and all those things. I am @WithWendy. I will see you all next week. Rilakkuma out.